Well, hello this beautiful, lovely Wednesday morning. Happy Independence Day, Nigeria, and welcome to our special coverage of what promises to be a very busy day while we spotlight and highlight some of the critical issues that shape Nigeria's journey through nationhood. In case you haven't been counting, it's been 65 years since Nigeria gained independence, something that started way back in October 1st of 1960. Well, the journey for independence started long before that. However, officially Nigeria is 65 years old as a country. But of course, a lot to talk about. The highs, the lows, as well as the journey ahead of Nigeria as a country. And we're going to do our best to bring you some very thoughtful analysis on what we should be focused on as we mark yet another turning point for the country that has touted itself as the giant of Africa. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Welcome to our special coverage this lovely Wednesday morning, and I will be co-piloting the beginning of the conversations today with the one and only Hauwa Kiyawa, who will be joining me for today's presentation. Hauwa, good morning.
Good morning, Abdullahi. Happy Independence.
Yeah, happy Independence. Someone was saying that you look much more attractive than Nigeria today, and I say every other Nigerian woman looks much more attractive than Nigeria, as far as the current situation is concerned. But today is one of those days where we reflect on not just how far we've come, but how well we've traveled this journey through nationhood. Because I believe there's always this conversation about whether we're doing this thing called nationhood right.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, it is, I would say, a time that we would have to reflect, look at the present, and see what holds in the future, and see how well we are handling Nigeria at this moment.
Yeah. So some of it will be about celebrating the 65 years, or any part of that 65 years that is worth celebrating. Much of it will be a reflection of what the issues are, what we need to overcome. But we're going to try to go sectorally on some of these issues, and we're going to kick off with, of course, what started the day with that national address by the president, where he highlighted a couple of things, and that will kickstart our conversation for today. And much later on, we'll focus on a lot more detailed issues around Nigeria's journey through nationhood 65 years on. What are we looking at here? What are some of the fault lines? Then we'll segue into some business as we spotlight the Nigerian economy over the past 65 years, its evolution, some of the challenges, what happened to our industries, what's happening to the agriculture sector, what happened to the ground-up pyramids, and where are we right now vis-a-vis what will be coming up in the future. Then we'll do something light, something I believe a lot of people will appreciate, where we do some trivia to test your knowledge of Nigeria, and then go down memory lane. Remember some of the historical antecedents of Nigeria in sports, especially the metamorphosis of how Nigeria became the sports powerhouse of Africa, and what that says about where we are today as a country. Then we're going to double down on a lot more of those serious talking points around the present day challenges and what that says about what we're facing as a people and as a nation. And we're going to wrap things up this afternoon with a look at the way forward, the future of Nigeria in the coming years. But of course, in between, we'll have a lot more features that would shed light on a couple of issues that would definitely interest a lot of our viewers. We're going to put the spotlight on some of our national heroes, what it took for Nigeria to get to this particular point, and what it would take us to get to that El Dorado, that utopia that we all talk about, or at least the politicians keep promising us election cycle after election cycle. So let's kick things off with our first guest in the studio. A lot of people already know these names because their opinions are not just popular, but they're well-rounded. So let's talk about the president's national address, what it says about Nigeria at 65, and what Nigerians can take away from it, especially as far as how it concerns their everyday life. Let's bring in our guest for this first segment. We're joined by Emmanuel Osemeka, a political commentator, a civic space expert, and someone who is unafraid of sharing his 2 cents on everything politics, policy, and governance. Also joining the panel this morning is a former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State, Comrade Ahmed Sajoh. Gentlemen, happy Independence Day and welcome to the program. Thank you so much for stopping by this morning.
Good morning. Happy Independence.
Good morning. Happy Independence. I see a lot of white, but I've not seen the green. At least the Nigerian green.
I think those shades are of green.
This is not the Nigerian green.
Okay. I believe we are covered in one way or the other. All right. First things first, before we get to the president's message, I thought it's important to understand what this particular day means for us as Nigerians. So if I can start with you, Mr. Osemeka, what does this day mean for you as a Nigerian?
I thought you would have started with the senior citizen. Okay. Well, I mean, it's a beautiful day, and 65 years of post-colonial rule. I think a day like this, 1st October, usually, as a child, you reflect and remember that on the 1st of October, usually, you make sure that your uniform is very squeaky clean because you want to go for marching in the field. Either it's to see the president or the military administrator or the governor, as the case may be, depending on your generation. So it's usually a day that, you want to sit down and take a look at how far we've come as a people. We had the colonial administration, they heralded this nation for many, many, many years with a lot of, changes, happening to our native lands, across the length and breadth of this nation today. A lot of our ways were changed, a lot of our thoughts, a lot of our cultures were affected, by that colonial administration. But on the 1st of October 1960, Nigerians took up the mantle of leadership, and we began what we call self-rule. That experiment, of course, didn't last long, for just 6 years before we had the military incursion. Of course, even the military incursion, you could say they were all Nigerians. They were not colonialists, but of course they had a different idea on how to run Nigeria. One of which is to suspend the constitution. Your rights were trampled upon, among several other things. But some people, will tell you that during the military administration, they had more developmental strides and with fewer budgets than what we have experienced, within this fourth republic. So for me, it's a mixed bag. 65 years, a man or a woman who is 65 is already an adult, a very senior adult.
Probably in the last phase of their life.
Yes, by Nigerian standard, senior citizen. So Nigeria has come of age, and truly a lot of the challenges that we are facing today should actually be a thing of the past. However, they call it democratic experiment, which I disagree a lot of the time, because I believe 25 years into democracy, we should have found our footing. Every business starts within the first 5 years. You are struggling, and at 5 years, 6 years, you should be able to break even and begin to make profit. At 10 years, you should begin to, know the direction you're going. But unfortunately, every 4 years or every 8 years, it's always a new dawn in Nigeria. We do away with the gains and the successes, and we throw away the challenges and the errors we've made. We begin afresh. That has been the story of Nigeria in a nutshell. But I believe that the future is brighter. The new generation is coming, and a new Nigeria is possible.
Yeah. Comrade, I believe you have some nostalgia about this particular day. Can we hear some of them?
Well, I could say happy Independence Day to Nigerians, but I am not a very happy person. Anytime we come to the independence, I feel sad. I feel sad, one, because it's the Independence Day itself is losing a lot of significance. I remember when I was a child, Independence Day was like Christmas and Salah combined. It was really something we looked forward to, and it meant something to us. Today, it means very little to many people. I must be very honest with you. Secondly, I am sad that 65 years after self-rule, we're still just a country. We are not a nation. There's a world of difference from being a country and being a nation. A country is a geographical entity. Yes, we have our boundaries. We know where the jurisdiction of our leadership lies. But we have not built ourselves into a people with shared values. We are, in fact, more divided as a people today than we were in 1960. And that is very, very sad. Then again, it's sad that we've lost the values we inherited at independence. At independence, this penchant for material resources, this excessive greed on the part of leaders and followers was not there. It's now we have this penchant for material wealth, and that the only value with which you would be recognized in Nigeria today is if you have wealth. Period. And people go after this wealth with all they have got. And I think that's sad for some of us. It's also sad that we had a leadership in the past that did not, what was human. Now we have a leadership that, I don't know how to call the kind of people that lead Nigeria at all levels now.
What do you mean human? Can you qualify that?
No, I'm talking about people who could relate with us very easily. I do remember that when I was a child, the convoys, the security aids around our leaders were very, very marginal. You could relate. I know that even as a primary school child, you know, the leaders come to our school and shake our hands and felt happy. When I was in secondary school, I remember, you know, I had a handshake with Yakubu Gowon. He was the president of the head of state of Nigeria. You could relate with the leaders. Now we are getting our leaders getting farther and farther away from us. A local government chairman will have security aids, and they will push you away if you go near him. Why did we get this mentality? Why are our leaders really suddenly being different from us? But then that is one side. But I want to, even before you say let's start talking about what the president said, I want to join the president in saying there's a quantum leap in some of the indices of development that should have propelled this country into the great nation that we had that had the promise of 1960. You know, I remember that by 1960, the schools in Ibadan alone were more in number than the schools in northern Nigeria. We had very few schools. We had, like the president said, we had just University of Ibadan and then Yaba Tech compared to what we have today. I remember as at independence, we wouldn't have been sitting down here talking on Trust TV, because up until very many years after independence, we did not have private broadcasting in Nigeria. You know, we had difficulties, you know, airing our voices in broadcast media that were not, you know, government owned, and so there's some level of progress, but the things that are not happening right, you know, it really makes some of us not feel very happy, because we need to get it right. We need to begin to rebuild our country first around the question of nationhood. We need to develop shared values. We need to develop an understanding that you know we should have fairness, equity, justice, inclusion in our system. These things are becoming, justice is commodified, it's transactional. You know, in 65 years after, you need to pay your way to get justice. You know, we're still discussing, inclusion. We're still discussing gender, special seat for women 65 years after independence. You know, we're still talking about issues that we should have done away with long ago, so we can face our development strides. We will reach the potential that we had. By 1960, we had more potentials than some of the Asian tigers that we look up to today. What happened to that potential? Fizzled out. Right. And then we're looking at, my brother said, next generation, or everybody talks about the next generation. My fear is that anybody 40 years and below in Nigeria had never lived in a good system. Does not even have a template of what a good system is. Anybody 40 years and below has only this template that we have now of greed, of primitive accumulation of wealth, of cheating each other, of dishonesty towards each other. That is the template our young people grew up with. And you could see it. Go to the, when they're doing the youth council election, it's not different from the national election. When they're doing the youth student union election, it's not different from the national election. They throw a lot of money into it. They throw a lot of violence into it. So are we expecting anything different from young people who are behaving this way? And I think it's worth reflecting.
Right. All right. So one of the things that I love about Nigeria, when people are sat down and asked questions about Nigeria, you get a lot of reminiscence when it comes to it. But then at this point, with moving on to the president's speech, when it comes to him talking about his governance and what is going on in Nigeria, he is quite proud of what he's doing for the economy, the rapid change that is being seen. You made mention of Nigeria is supposed to be at another level as of 25 years of independence. Now we're at 65. Is the change and, the rapid declaration of a switch in our economy something that is meant to be on a quicker pace and make sure that Nigeria gets to the point that everyone is hoping for?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think probably I would just sort of, rewind back a little bit. So 25 years of unbroken democratic rule. You would believe, or you would think that, with every successive administration, you will see a build-up on the previous administration. But rather what you see is, this continuous, operationalization of interventions in silos. So at the end of the day, it becomes pretty difficult to synergize whatever it is that may have happened, at different sectors or subsectors. And when you have such, it becomes pretty difficult to measure and also to have the kind of growth and development that you really desire. As for the president, I wasn't surprised when I, listened to the president, because I took time to listen to him. 30 minutes, they recorded message. 5 minutes talking about Nigeria, 15 minutes on his achievement. The Holy Book, the Bible, says that there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof leads to destruction. In every human, most especially politicians in Nigeria, they see things from a narrow prism, and that is the truth. More so for a man like President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who claimed that the presidency has been his lifelong ambition. And you expect a man who's had a lifelong ambition to, be armed and ready with clear-cut vision on how to, tackle each sector of our national life with clear deliverables, per time. Unfortunately, throughout those years of his ambition, he's developed himself more in the strategic political wings than strategic governance rule. And so when you listen and hear and see the way President Bola Ahmed Tinubu runs Nigeria today as a president, you will see clearly that everything is seen from the narrow political prison. That's why he's more interested in putting it in our faces that I have done this and done this and done this and done that. Whether you've seen it or you've not seen it, I've done that. 1 hour before the broadcast, if you let's watch a lot of the mainstream media, you will see a documentary that they called A New Nigeria is Here. That's political. That statement, A New Nigeria is possible, is from an opposite political. So you see that there's a deliberate effort to tell the opposition or to tell whoever is coming to challenge that, look, what you claim is possible is already here. And who are the people that they showcased? They showcased InterSwitch. InterSwitch started operation like 20-something years ago. So InterSwitch could not have been the New Nigeria is here. That's one. Two, there's Vodi, there's now SCA and the rest of them talking about all the achievements. For God's sake, these are agencies that ought to do what they are doing. Are there appreciable steps made by this administration? The answer is yes. At what cost is a different and another conversation we could look at. And when I talk all the time here, and I keep telling, I've said it, I think it was the last Independence or the Democracy Day, where we talked about, when I mentioned that the challenge I have with the administration is not that they are not making steps, but they are making steps to correct the error they created. That has been my forte all along. This is an APC administration that started with late President Muhammadu Buhari, my very good, I love to mention his name all the time. I love President Muhammadu Buhari. Unfortunately, he didn't deliver a lot of the things that many people believed, which I didn't believe he would also be able to deliver. So he had 8 years of colossal damage to the economy, to the unity of this nation. Then President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board, knowing fully well that something went wrong with the administration. The expectation is that he should have begun, he said, I will start from where he stopped. But he didn't. He made it worse. Like I used to describe, he dug the ground and buried Nigeria. Now what they are doing is that they are trying to unearth the manhole they dug to bring us out of the manhole. So inflation was at 15% as of 2023. Today is dropped to 20 point whatever percent after the rebasing, because the reality is that the inflation has not really come down. It's just the rebased GDP that brought it down. And yes, there are a few things that has happened, but the reality is that the drivers of the inflation are yet to be tackled. So when you talk about governance, it's sometimes when you listen to our politicians, especially when the president speaks, it's as if his advisors or his aides are not able to speak reality to him. So they probably speak to the monumental or the humongous amount of money that has been spent from our budget. So you take a look at the Calabar Coastal Road. To what extent is that road beneficial to Nigeria as of today? Abuja, Lokoja, Auchi, Okpela, all the way to Delta. That road is unmotorable. Those are the low-hanging fruits that you expect the president and his team to tackle immediately. And that is an economic arterial road. Amongst several other roads across the north, and what they will tell you, that is, work is ongoing. Work is ongoing for 2 whole years. This is 2.5 years. We're almost at the 3rd year, and by 2026, politics begins. That's why you see that at every turn, you hear the president and his handlers, they are pontificating about the next election and thinking about how to win the next election, or how to subjugate the opposition, or how to subjugate those who are clearly analyzing the realities on ground. The prices of food in the market is yet to come down. 1 or 2 may have come down, but many more are still very expensive. A crate of egg still sells for as much as 6,000 today. In 2023, it was selling for 3,000 or 2,000 something. A bag of rice in 2011 was 7,500. In 2023, it was 23 or 25,000. It went as high as 134,000 and is now about 80-something thousand. Now, what parameters are we using to say that we've made progress in terms of bringing down inflation? Is it taking it from 25,000 using the bag of rice, 25,000 to 134 and coming down to 85, or is it from 134 to 85,000? So these are the questions that sometimes when you ask yourself, you wonder if those managing our resources and our commonwealth understand the realities in the streets, in the local government, in the states. And the state governments are worse off. They've received much more monies that any other administration has ever given. But there is almost little or nothing that you can point to across the states.
Right. But also, to reflect on what the president has said, Comrade Ahmed Sajoh, he said their administration inherited a near-collapse economy caused by decades of fiscal policy distortions and mismanagement or misalignment that had impaired real growth. And he said as a new administration, they faced a choice: continue business as usual and watch the nation drift, or embark on a courageous fundamental reform path. Do you think the dots are connected in terms of the president's analysis of the current state of the nation?
Honestly, as at the time this government came in, the economic headwinds were dangerously, heading to total bankruptcy and collapse of the country. And like my brother here said, it's every one of us within the political space from, say, 1999, let's just pick it from that 1999 to date, must take responsibility for the misgovernance that occurred within this period. So it's definite, it's natural, it's true that the system was actually mismanaged for this period. There are a lot of governments in this country that had so much goodwill that they could have taken any decision and Nigerians would have accepted those decisions as being taken in their interest, that mismanaged the trust. And in the process, we found ourselves where we found ourselves. Our debt service ratio was heading to beyond 90%, which meant that we had very little to utilize for development. At that period of time, we were using the ways and means to print currency rather than encourage productivity to provide for more funds within our economy. The monumental, the massive, corruption within the oil sector, which seemed impossible to address, was eating deep into our resources. And, the Naira exchange differential, and the value of the Naira being hinged on the volatility of the oil market was also a distortion within our economic system. So in reality, we had serious economic headwinds that were threatening to destroy the entire country and lay the foundations for monumental crisis, because the economy is what really the public relates with. Every other thing we're talking about, it's our own, at our own level. But it's the economy that affects them. Like my brother said, when a bag of rice got to 135,000, it was quite a disaster for the nation.
Right.
That it came down, it's a drop in our inflation, whether we like it or not. It may not be, that this was what we wanted, or that we in the first instance, by his own argument, which I agree with, is that we should have even avoided it getting to that level in the first instance.
Right.
But it was not avoidable. We got there. So now, truly, we've reached a trajectory where the economic headwinds are under control to some extent, that our economy is beginning to turn around the corner. But we need a political will to avoid politicizing economic matters, to avoid politicizing social matters, to look at the individual, the Nigerian people, as the core asset that we have and the center of our economic policies. Forget it. The Xi Jinping, the current president of China, in one of his writings, In and Out of Poverty, said, if a leader must put up a billboard or a poster to tell you he has achieved something, then he has not achieved anything. Because if the achievement is there, you feel it yourself. You know it. So we need to begin to talk to our leadership at all levels to develop sufficient political will to take the hard decisions. At least one thing I can credit Tinubu for was that there were some hard decisions that he took with an analysis, or without an analysis, that's a different story entirely, but he took those decisions that would have been taken if we took those decisions in 1999. By today, we will not be talking the way we're talking.
All right. Let us look at some clips from the president's speech this morning, and so that we can hear it from the horse's mouth directly. Let's take a look.
Our founding heroes and heroines, Herbert Macaulay, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Sir Ahmadu Bello, Margaret Eko, Anthony Enahoro, Adoke Akintola, Michael Okpara, Aminu Kano, Funmilayo Ransom Kuti, and other nationalists believe it was Nigeria's manifest destiny to lead the entire black race as the largest black nation on earth. For decades, the promise of our independence has been tested by profound social, economic, and political challenges, and we have survived. While we may not have achieved all the lofty dreams of our forebearers, we have not strayed too far from them. In 65 years since our independence, we have made tremendous progress in economic growth, social cohesion, and physical development. Our economy has experienced significant growth since 1960, although it is much easier for those whose vocation is to focus solely on what ought to be. We must recognize and celebrate our significant progress. Nigerians today have access to better education and healthcare than in 1960. At independence, Nigeria had 120 secondary schools with a student population of about 130,000. Available data indicate that as of year 2024, there were more than 23,000 secondary schools in our country. At independence, we had only the University of Ibadan and Yaba College of Technology as the two tertiary institutions in Nigeria. By the end of last year, there were 274 universities, 183 polytechnics, and 236 colleges of education in Nigeria, comprising federal, state, and private institutions. We have experienced a significant surge in growth across every sector of our national life since independence. In healthcare, infrastructure, financial services, manufacturing, telecommunications, information, technology, aviation and defense, among others.
Manage this man.
All right, that is a speech, but at the end of the day, a lot would say it lacks that energy that would inspire a lot of Nigerians. But let me turn to you, Mr. Osemeka. When it comes to a lot of things that the president has said, especially concerning Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians at this point in time, it is Nigeria's independence. A lot of Nigerians would say Nigeria itself does not have an enabling environment for it to thrive as it is supposed to. But then with a lot that has been said, has been put back into Nigerians or into society when it comes to palliatives, when it comes to, cushioning the hardship. What does it mean to be able to enable Nigerians to thrive in a country that has been going on, should I say, or got her independence for 65 years?
The only way to, one of the major ways to grow your economy is to have a productive sector. You can never overemphasize it. If you listen to my friend in the US, Donald Trump, whom I love to hate, all right? He says America first, which I believe our president is copying one way or the other, but without understanding what the man is doing. His own American first is that manufacturing should return to America. And his own misunderstanding or misalignment of that kind of thought is that he said, in the 40s or in the 30s, I'm not quite sure, I think it's the 30s or 40s, when America had all the manufacturing and they were able to produce all those weapons and did all the manufacturing, and of course, he felt that America was good at the time in his own head because, he's old. Likewise, when you have geriatrics run government, most often they go back to their supposed yesteryears without understanding that the world has evolved and that you're living in a world that is filled with innovation. And instead of innovating, they go back. In Nigeria today, if you listen in the last 10 years or in the last 20 years, there's always this mantra that comes out of each administration, which, during the last administration, you heard Professor Osemeka talk about it all the time. Ease of doing business. Nigeria is one of the most difficult places to do business. That's the truth. You have almost near to no access to funds to do any business in Nigeria. There is a business where, a startup we're trying to put together, and it's so difficult. Sometimes the regulatory agencies are at cross purposes. You hear from CAC a particular threshold. You go to the core regulatory agencies, there's a different threshold that is miles apart. There's no synergy between the two of them. Now, if you do your business plan based off of just CAC, you already failed. Two, getting certifications for certain things that should actually be easy is made complex because we still operate the manual process where files are carried from one table to the other, and you know the implication. So the reality is that today, any government that wants to make Nigeria productive must first of all tackle the issues of ease of doing business. You must, all the variables that is associated with ensuring ease of doing business must be taken care of quickly. One. Two, I was glad when the president began to talk about trying to make the economy productive and all that. But I'm saying, yes, you're interested in making the economy productive, but what is your government doing? Yes, it's good that you're giving student loan. And when you look at the student loan that is being given, you understand clearly that, like some said, I don't have evidence to that, just like the Buhari administration, where if you don't belong to BSO, you don't get certain things. For you to get certain government interventions, you must fill the forms of BSO. I'm using BSO as an example, for example, Buhari Support Organization. Today you have a similitude of same. So you have funds earmarked to support manufacturing, to support production in one way or the other. But how easy or how accessible is it for innovators, for startups? Because for every startup that takes off, that's employment. That's more employment. And if you look at the G7, they are more interested in startups because that is what increases the level of production for them. More people are employed, a lot of their citizens are taken out of unemployment sphere, and more tax. So, but for me, I believe strongly that the president may sincerely have good intentions to, reduce the poverty level in the country, but they may have been going about it the wrong way.
Right. And comrade, if you have to segue a little bit, focusing on the content of the message or the quality of the message in itself. I mean, as a communication specialist yourself, give me your understanding of if it checks all the boxes. I mean, for the most part, some people think it looked more like a State of the Nation address than an Independence Day, because usually Independence Day everywhere else is commemorative, right? We look back at where we've been, where we are right now, where we're headed to, in a not so political way. But what is your reading of it as a State of the Nation address? Did the president check all the boxes in terms of what Nigeria is actually going through right now?
What exactly are the boxes? You're asking somebody to tick boxes. What are the boxes?
In terms of admitting the real picture, because the question is, comrade, some people feel the administration paints a parallel Nigeria that doesn't exist for most people when he talks about all the improvements and how everything is looking green right now.
No. Let's look at it. There are institutional progress and there are personal progress. The institutions could grow without necessarily, affecting the individual. And it does not vitiate the fact that the institutions have grown, but the individual does not feel the growth. And so we should not mix the two. You don't compare apples and mangoes. At the institutional level, the president is telling you institutionally, these are the indices I have on my table. And those indices are telling me that there is progress. And if those progress at institutional level do not trickle down to the people, that's a different matter entirely. But even at the level of the people, Barbara just said, even if it was created by the APC, rice had reached 135,000. I bought it at 135, but the last one I bought was 85. So as far as, that represents a drop in inflation, even for me. But that may not be where we are heading to, or that may not be the goal that we want to achieve. But let me tell you, lawyers will tell you in court that you cannot build something on nothing. Here we are as Nigerians, 65 years after independence. We've accepted all the institutional arrangements that mitigates our development. And then as individuals, we want to see development in our lives. It's not possible. We have the first institutional failure we have in this country is our constitution. Part 2 of that constitution, fundamental objectives and directive principles of state. So beautiful, non-justiciable. It doesn't make government responsible. It says you are entitled to free kaza, free this, free that, but if you don't get it, you can't go anywhere to seek for redress. Fundamentally, there's a distortion. Secondly, we clap for our leadership when they develop an entitlement mentality. when they have converted leadership in this country into a title rather than a responsibility, where they tell you every senator is entitled to this much every month, every House of Reps member is entitled to this much every month, every governors collect money, the local government chairman collect money. You notice what happened recently in one of the states where local government wives went to Turkey for a conference. We accept all those things as part of our governance template, and then we sit back and complain that the government is not developing. How can they develop us? We have to have an institutional setup that reduces the level of entitlement and the wastages at the level of governance, and that puts more resources into the development of. Look, if you take the quantum of money, some of our leaders, clearly collect. I even saw somebody display a sack of money this high that he was distributing. If you put all the quantum of this money into development, take, for example, all the lies we are doing in the name of constituency project, if we could consolidate all that fund and drop it into power generation, we would have overcome our power crisis by today. If we put all the quantum of money that we are giving people, in the name of empowerment, that they immediately sell. Somebody,
the president referenced the 8 million households.
Somebody whose constituency, I'm coming, somebody whose constituency does not have electricity, had distributed deep freezers as, empowerment to his people. Are they going to fire it with firewood? So we begin to ask ourselves, are our priorities even right? Are we even talking? He talked about the ease of doing business. Let me tell you, if you do not ease doing business in a country, people will not come and put their resources into developing businesses in that country. Why do we have multiple agencies? Again, I said institutional. Why do we have multiple agencies superintending over one matter, and all of them working mostly at cross purposes? And we're not correcting that. We're not even raising issues about that. Yes, I understand that if people, are more concerned with bread and butter issues, they are right, because it's the immediate. But your bread and butter cannot be assured unless if the economy expands. And the economy cannot expand unless the politics is gotten right. And getting the politics right includes getting the governance template right. You can't get a governance template under an institutional arrangement where every agency of government is interested in just simply what do the operators of that agency get rather than what Nigeria gets.
Right. If I may add quickly, the reason why a bag of rice dropped from that all-time high of 135 to 85 is because we began to import, not because of production.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about production, we need to situate it appropriately. So inflation actually hasn't eased. What has happened, what you have is artificial, all right? In addition to that.
Is that what you believe? Because the data says it's real.
We rebased, the food inflation hasn't eased, has it?
Well, yes. It hasn't, marginally.
So
it has. It has.
So the question is, we rebase the economy, don't forget. Rebasing that economy, created some level of ease on the inflation. Don't forget. So would you call that clear-cut easing?
Are you saying
in reality?
Are you saying they're politically padding the data? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you are the one saying it.
I'm asking you if that's what you're saying.
I've said what I said. You can.
It's not very clear, so I want to make it clear for my viewers.
No. When I was taught,
this data is political. Is that what you're saying?
My professor used to say to us that he's responsible for what he said, but not what you understand.
Okay, I'm asking you to be clear with your messages.
The facts are there for everybody to see. Inflation figures were at a particular numbers until we came up with new data calling it rebased economy. And with those new data that we rebased, not because of economic activities, the figures reduced. That is what I'm saying. I'm subject to that reduction that affected the numbers you're seeing. But in reality, what ought to have helped if we are growing our economy or we are doing the right things in terms of production of rice and all that, because we're not producing rice as much as we ought to produce because of insecurity. We are yet to tackle those insecurity. Those are the drivers of the inflation. Part of the drivers of the inflation is cost of transportation. The cost of transportation has not eased yet, and as a result, is still a major contributor to the inflation, more so in the food inflation. That's why you see that the food inflation is almost at that level where it is, and that is why I shook my head when my elder brother was talking about institutional progress. That is different from personal progress. I disagree, because institutions are not in isolation from the people. It is the institution that supposedly, helps the people to dwell. Government is an institution. All their activities is supposed to help the people. If the government is feeding fat and the people are not, for example, the president said that we should begin to buy Nigeria. But he's not already buying Nigeria. His vehicles are from America. All the National Assembly vehicles are from Japan. We have made in Nigerian vehicles here. Some will say, it's assembled. Yes, but they are made in Nigerian vehicles. Why are we not using them? I expected those kind of policy statements that every MDA is now mandated to buy made in Nigerian vehicles. That's where to start from.
All right. You might want to rebut that, because I think
that was no.
Yeah,
I think take for example the recent monetary policy from the central bank that reduced interest rate. It's an institutional progress that will eventually, dovetail into public life. We hope that investors like my brother here, who will go and borrow money from the banks, will now have some ease, because the interest rate has gone down. So generally,
as 50%.
But the truth about it is that, even the rebasing was done to capture certain economic activities that were not actually considered as significant. But presently, we all know they are very, very significant. The entertainment industry, for example, is significant. The IT industry, it's also very significant. So there are significant aspects of our economic lives that were not considered as very important in the past, but they are now important. But what really matters to the ordinary Nigerian, and this is key, what really matters to the ordinary Nigerian is that Nigeria should be more productive, Nigeria should be more secure, Nigeria should be able to have a poverty net that, protects practically every member of the community. And I think this is the direction that we must encourage governments at all levels. Right. If you listen to the president, the quantum of money now in the hands of state governments is very high. The quantum of money in the hands of local governments, most of whom are beginning to enjoy some level of autonomy, and even if they are abusing that autonomy, but they are beginning to enjoy some level of autonomy, is high. Right. Where the quantum of money in the hands of some other sectors of the economy, the student loan funds, I must assure my brother here that some of us have our relations who are benefiting from it, and we didn't have to sign any form saying we support any government. Right. I know that for sure. And so generally speaking, yes, there are progress here and there, but when you quantify it within the context of Nigeria's potential as a potentially great nation, as a potentially great economy, this is a country with a population that anything you sell, even if you sell the lowest thing in this country, you will have buyers. I think we should have done better than what we have done.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Osemeka and Comrade Sajoh, for giving us a little bit of reminiscence as well as an insight on the journey so far for Nigeria. Right now, we'll be looking at Nigeria's historical journey so far, so make sure you stay tuned and I would say enjoy. And after that, we'll be going directly into our next segment. We'll be looking at Nigeria's 65 years of nationhood. We'll be back.